viewport of this little street scene of ours. Okay. Okay. So let's start. What is that? Okay, so as I said, when you guys start lighting your scenes, you need to go through a little process and think about what your outcomes are. Okay, so what time of day is it? Is it day? Is it night? What season is it? Is it hot? Is it cold? What is the temperature? What direction are we looking at? So where is the sun coming from or the light coming from? Are there any physical lights in the scene that we need to be aware of? Are there any that we could add to make it be more interesting? If it's an interior scene, where are the physical lights, where are the natural lights coming from? All of these things we need to know. So I mean, it's more of a checklist really of just initially adding those elements and then going in and adjusting them and tweaking it to make sure that what we're doing actually reads as clearly as possible. Okay, so I did a night scene in the previous one, so I'm going to do a daytime one now. And first of all, what we need to do is always start with our key light source. Okay, which would be a sunlight. Before you begin, always make a new collection for your lights. Day lightings, seriously. Okay, and work within that, and also name your lights as you go. It's very easy to add a whole bunch of lights that you end up having no idea what they do, and remembering if area light 6 was this light or that light or whatever, it really becomes quite frustrating when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're trying to figure this out. Okay, so first of all, start with nothing. Okay, start with literally a blank scene. Okay, so if you render that out, you should have black. Which we do. Okay, cool. So that's step 1. So if this is a daytime scene outside, our main light source is obviously the sun. Okay, so let's go and add in a sunlight. Also, what I do often when I'm doing this, since renders can get quite slow, specifically with lighting, you're working with final shots and there's a lot of detail and. So setting your sampling viewport sample rate, I suppose, to something low, like 8 or something. So it can do some samples, but it will stop rendering after a couple of seconds. Just so that once it stops rendering, you have like full control of the scene again. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so there's my environment. So first of all, I'm going to add in my sunlight. Okay, using this pause button also helps a lot. Okay, so if you do need to do stuff, you just pause your lighting or your rendering for a second or two. Okay, so that is my sun light. Okay, again, sunlights you can have wherever in the scene. It really doesn't make too much of a difference. And first of all, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to adjust the intensity and the color of that to kind of set the tone. So let's first of all start with quite a strong light. We can always bring this down again if we need to. That's probably, but not 100. I need to say, well, 100 is not bad, but I need to say less. Let's say 20. Okay, so sunlight quite strong, and you can see the stronger we make this, the more bounce light we're actually getting out of it as well. Okay, so this whole wall being lit up by these colored plates of spices, whatever they are. Okay, and then I do want to make this ever so slightly warmer. Okay, so just a slight yellow tint to that, or orange tint. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, so let's leave that there. Also going to rotate this a little bit to one side so we can favor, or at least see a little bit more. Okay, so let's do that, and also a little bit more toward the back of the scene. so we can see some of the light shining on these walls and stuff. Okay. Okay, so once I've got that in, okay, I also like to specifically add in my environment light. Okay, so this is the sun, yes, but my environment light, which would in a sense act as pretty much a full light in this case. So adding that in, just to boost the render a little bit. Also, it should speed it up slightly since darker areas and where light gets to less renders slower because it's obviously grainy. So the more light you have, the less grain you have. So waiting for those dark bits to get rid of all the grain would take quite a while. So we can go and help that a little bit by adding in like this clearly blue color since the sky is blue. Okay, and let's put that on 1 and see what that does. Okay, so immediately we get a bit of a blue tint to our shadows. Okay, which helps. I don't know why there is so much of a shadow. That roof can't clearly cast that much shadow, can it? Let's then exaggerate it a little bit more. That's so playing with the light direction, definitely worth it to see what's going to give the most interesting result. Maybe that's not bad, and we can boost the bounce a little bit more to see. Also increase the strength of the sun. And we can adjust the angle of the size of this. That's actually getting a little bit more interesting. So I don't like how overexposed this wall becomes when it's in direct sunlight, but that doesn't look terrible either. Let's see if we because I like what's happening here. I think this in the shadow looks very cool compared to this, which looks a bit drab. Regardless, 2 lights so far, and you're already getting quite a nice result. Daytime exterior lighting setups tend to be easier than night setups, simply because there's more light, more light and less physical lights. So you're not going to have candles and windows and all of those things. I'll show you the nighttime setup now as well. Which is definitely more complicated. I think something like that, where this is nice and shadow, we have more contrast, which looks cool. So it's really playing with where the shadows are that makes it. What if we reverse the light angle? That looks weird. And then it would be nice to start adding speculars in places and highlights and that kind of thing. So like a rim light maybe on these rocks would be really cool. Or some speculars on the ground plane or on the leaves or something. Really to add more contrast to it, since it's quite flat at the moment. That box isn't supposed to be there. And I expect there's another box that's not supposed to be there. Oh no, that's actually supposed to be. Anyway, so that's maybe not a bad thing. Let's increase the See what this does. If you increase the exposure of the environment light a little bit more. I don't like what that's done now. Let's drop that. I like the contrast a little bit more. What this giant stripe is there. But I think we could potentially add just a bit of a fill for here. So let's see what we can do to add something in like that. So for that, I'm going to add in a. So let's turn the sunlight off. So that's what our sky is basically giving us, which isn't much. That's the only fill we have at the moment. You see the bricks are actually wet currently. So let's add in another area light and see if we can just fill up the side a little bit better. They are, but they're also dependent on where they are. So they're very much I rely on that as well. So let's make this nice and big first of all. 45. Okay, we can make this a rectangle, so we can change the dimensions of it a little bit. And basically just kind of fill up this area over there. So if we see what that's doing on its own, you can see, so it's casting that light over there. So I made the material on the floor plane a little bit more reflective so we can get some more highlights on it. That doesn't look bad actually. Let's just make that a bit longer maybe. So just to light this wall up a little bit more. See if we can get slightly more specular on the floor there. So that'll be cool. If we get these little highlights in as well, I think that'll help a lot. And then while we're doing this, I would like to get some form of a rim light going on something over there. I think either those bricks, the archway, could be cool. So let's turn that off and add another one. So another area light over there, perhaps shining on at least these bricks over here. Maybe make that a bit bigger as well. Not too much. Let's make it like that. Let's see, and then put it back a little bit more. So let's see what that's doing. Just boosted it a lot for now so we can clearly see its effect. So it's not doing much over there, but it's making a very nice reflection on the rocks. Let's just turn off the environment light while we do that so we can see a little bit better. Okay, so that is definitely doing something there. So it's doing exactly what I wanted it to actually. Just that bit of a rim there, which should help separate just this wall from the background. Let's see what happens if we turn off its the diffuse. Okay, so those rocks have zero. I think they're entirely rough, so they have no glossy rays to them. So let's, if we just bump up their glossy rays a bit. Well, let's just make sure we select the right one. There we go. Let's just see what they've got going for them at the moment. Okay, so this is their roughness. That should help. So their roughness was, well, they had no specular properties to them. So the specular was all the way down. So let's see. So just by increasing that makes a big difference. So let's make them 0.5, and the roughness is also on 0.5. So that'll be quite nice, I think, just to highlight that a little bit more. So that with our other full light is doing that. Okay, the glossy on the floor is probably a bit much, so we could probably do something about that. But let's see if we turn back our sky. I think this was set to 2. So now we get a nice overcast kind of effect. But this definitely helping a little. That could be a bit intense, but we can always change it. And then adding back our key light. See, I mean, that makes a world of difference. And it's subtle, this reflection on the rocks itself. But that looks, if you compare that with that, definitely makes a huge difference. Just lifting out those little bits over there. Okay, emulating that bouncing light coming in over there, which definitely helps. And then this first full light that we added just for this side, you can see that has a, we can maybe boost it a little bit more, see what it's doing. 600. So the other one we actually left quite, it wasn't that strong, it's 100, that's fine. Don't know why that's so white. I have to go and check that out. But anyway, I mean, it's not terrible. I'm not crazy about it, but I mean, we could tweak it as much as we still wanted to. Let me just reset that. Like, I'm also not opposed to just that as in for the top-down lighting that we get. It's quite nice. Like a midday kind of street market scene. This looks very cool. Just reset that. Okay, so I've actually just moved that over there so that I can point it a little bit easier. Okay. So what we go and do with the actual light direction now is not terribly important, but I'd like the light coming a little bit from behind. That's quite nice, I think. But anyway, fairly simple. I think exterior day scenes are probably the easiest ones to do. I do want to show you what I did for the night scene, which we can also still take a little bit further as well. Okay, so the night scene, we first started off with a nice dark saturated blue environment light. Bordering on purple almost. Don't know what that was set to, but let's set it to that. Okay, so that was the, or something similar at least. And then let's go turn these on one at a time. So not very many, but at least a couple. And here we have the added benefit of having physical lights that we can add to our scene. So first of all, there's the moon, okay? So that just boosts the, let's turn this down a little bit. That's a bit much. Okay, also lighting for nighttime shots is difficult because you need to still show enough detail for people to see what you're looking at. It doesn't help you just show them a black frame and be like, well, it was nighttime, so there weren't lights. But anyway, so be aware of that. So you do end up with more lit scenes than what you'd expect. Okay, then there were some physical lights in the scene. So there were, put one like shining down on the front of some of the doorways. So there's one in the foreground and one in the background for a little bit more detail. And then we added some for the windows. So for instance, the light shining from inside some of these rooms. There's two of them. There's that one and one up there. Okay, that one's quite nice because it also illuminates the underside of that archway, and I think that looks very cool. Okay, I think even the moonlight's too strong at this point. And then also just a bit of a full light lighting the inside of the tunnel, and we didn't actually get to like adding rim lights and stuff, so we can maybe see if there's anything we want to add still, but you could still take this much further, I think, you know, highlighting bits and pieces of it and maybe hiding others. Getting slightly more of a glossy reflection on the floor would be quite nice. Let's see if we just drop that entire, that's a bit dark. So I mean, without any of the actual cold lighting, that's just all the warmth that we're adding, which could probably be a little bit more in places. So this gets a bit dark. So ideally we'd want to have a subtle like orange cast over the whole frame. So definitely still here we could do with a bit of a full light. So maybe we could add like a street lamp or something, with the idea of one, just to fill this up a little. In fact, let's do that quickly. So also a bit of an area light. Okay, where'd that go? Okay, so maybe somewhere over there, maybe like over here. Okay, and then just illuminating on that wall a little bit. Okay, so first I always like to tweak lights, seeing firstly what their effect is on their own, and then combining it with the rest of the scene, so that we can clearly see what it is that we're adding one light at a time. Never add more than one light at a time and then take it from there. So always take it slow, one light and then the next. So it's that one. Okay, also definitely going to make it a little bit warmer. Okay, let's bump this up. Still not doing very much. Okay. A bit too much, but gives me a nice idea of what it is that we're doing. Let's make it a smaller light, so that it definitely has the feel of more of an like a street lamp, that kind of thing. It looks very cool. Always feels like a stage play when you're doing this. Like, you know, it's a dark room with one light and you've seen what that thing's doing. It feels like a set. It's fun. So I don't want to overlight that, obviously, but let's put it back on, say, 50, not 550, and maybe increase the saturation a little bit more. Okay, and let's see together with our other warm lights what our warm color is doing over the whole frame. So that's better. I think having you know, just being able to see some more of the detail here. It's a lot darker on the projector than what it is on the screen. But in the same sentence, we probably need something back there as well, just to add in something without that getting too dark. So let's do the similar thing. So I'm going to pause that and just duplicate this light. And then put it over there. Rotate it that way. It should help. So let's see what that does. But this one I'm definitely going to drop, so I don't want it to be so drop. And I want that edge of that wall to stand out more. So let's just turn all these others off quickly. You stop. There we go. Okay, so stop, 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 stop. Okay, and then render. Okay, so I want this wall lit enough so I can see the edge of this pillar or the archway again. Okay, so maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so that line over there, you can barely see it on the screen, but let's bump it up then a little, just for the sake of illustration. Okay, so that's cool. So together with everything else, we have pause. On. Okay, so that for our warm plate looks pretty cool, I think. I think it's got enough contrast to it that we've not overlit that in that sense. And then if we add in our moonlight, which will then just bring back that balance a bit, as well as our environment light, which I'm going to make slightly darker. Too much. But I mean, that doesn't look too bad at all. I think that looks quite nice. And then you can decide where you want more highlights again. For instance, I don't know if it'll work at all, but if we were to add in one of these area lights, so we added for our archway from the daytime lighting scene, let's light that up. That actually looks cool. So the idea of just bringing back those rim lights again, maybe we could just warm it up instead of having such a white light to kind of imply that it's a physical lighting scene. And we end up with something quite pretty, I think. Anyway, so lighting is where it's at. Seriously, it's definitely something that will make or break your renders, 100%. Remember contrast. It's all about contrast. Okay. Yes, sir.
More lighting from the right side, like window. Wouldn't there be more yellow lights at the ground?
Maybe. We could make it brighter. Okay, cool. So I think that's lighting's lots of fun. We don't get opportunities to do it enough, to be honest. But yeah, I think having maybe one or two more of these light coming out of these rooms just for more contrast would be nice. But yeah, so far, so good. Cool. Do you guys have any questions? Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for major. Yay, major.